that was the start of us really understanding how to walk one together, but together on a journey where we really started learning how to go, okay, this thing has happened, leak, whatever, right? That's causing all these things. The next question is, God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
God, what are you doing? Is this something to fight? Is this something to press into? What are you doing? Because in each one of these events that happened, it really wasn't about the event, but what was better was you and I learning how to journey and hear God together. Right. What was also better was how much our kids learned to have to have flexibility.
It set the tone for how to navigate and walk through crisis with joy and expectancy and faith and trust, knowing that God is navigating this whole thing.
And this regulator got put in place that said, you have got to learn how to build with this woman, and you guys have got to go on this journey together.
It's a partnership. It's a compatibility between you and I of like, we complement each other in our strengths and our weaknesses.
All of those things, you were designed to be able to carry that weight. You were designed to be able to manage all of those things if we kind of continue on the track record of what he's built in us.
Right.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Sarah, and last year we started our business By Design Homes, which includes design and construction, midterm rentals, and staging.
And on this podcast, we will be talking to other business owners about how they are creating unique and impactful businesses while building and managing their own lives and families.
Along the way, we'll share our journey as business owners and a busy family of 6.
We hope that you join us to learn and grow and discover new pathways to building life. Welcome to the David and Sarah podcast. So this episode of the David and Sarah podcast will be slightly different because me and Sarah will not be talking to somebody else. We will be talking to one another.
Yes.
So it will be us looking into each other's eyes.
Don't make it weird.
It'll be Sarah and I talking to each other. It was an idea that came from Dustin and Alicia from episode 3, where they were like, we should spend some time to tell our story as we're talking to other people about their stories. We obviously have a story and a journey that has led us to be where we're at. And so it would be a good idea for us to share that with those who are listening to the David and Sarah podcast.
So this is us. Talking about us. We're so good at this.
We are very good at this. None of this is going to make it. So this is us talking to one another, kind of a dinner for two type of situation. So hopefully you guys enjoy it and get some insight into our lives and the building of By Design Homes, and we hope you enjoy it.
This is the David and Sarah podcast.
Indeed it is. And we are David and Sarah.
It's true.
You'll proceed to call me Aaron every time you mention me in this podcast.
I did think that we probably need to cover that up front.
As to why you're going to call me Aaron the whole time? Yeah, we should. So when you met me, way back in 1999.
1999.
The year that I graduated high school.
January 1999.
You had already graduated because you're older than me.
Thank you. Let's get that out there.
It feels like it's really a foundational part of our relationship is that you are a massive 8 months older than me.
Yeah.
And so So yes, growing up, I was Aaron, which is my middle name. And so that's how you met me. And that is how I have always been to you in this house.
To me. Mm-hmm.
But somewhere in college, I went, I'm tired of correcting people who say David Brown. I'll just be David. And then to everybody I've met since then, I've been David.
Yes. So I call you Aaron.
On the David and Sarah podcast.
On the David and Sarah podcast.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So we met each other in 1999, early 1999. I'm a senior in high school. You are in college.
Yes.
First year in college. So we're basically the same age. Almost the same age. Except for 8 months a year. when you're older. But other than that, so we met in 99. First date, I went off to college, but came back. I went to Texas A&M, came back. First date, December 27th at the Cheesecake Factory.
Cheesecake Factory. Yep.
3 months later, we were engaged.
Yeah.
March 17th. And then 9 months later,
Yep.
January 6th, 2001, we were married.
Yeah.
So, and here we are, married for what that math says,
23
years later.
Yeah.
23 years later.
Yeah.
So you moved in with me, as one generally does.
When you get married.
When you get married. Yeah, I remember that. In College Station.
Yep.
And, you know, as we were talking about this, I think one of the important pieces of our story that's kind of woven in is how we got connected to Genesis Center and Ian Chellen and the community that we're a part of today.
Yeah.
So we met in church.
Yeah, we did.
Our parents were both elders at the church in Houston.
Yeah, your family showed up to Lighthouse, which is basically just small group churches at my house.
Your house, church was at your house.
My house was one of the Lighthouse hosts.
That's right.
And your family showed up at my house on a Sunday morning.
I have no memory of how that happened, like how we found that lighthouse in West Houston.
Because it was way far away from where you lived.
Yeah, we were in Northwest Houston.
Yeah, and we were down in Katy.
Yeah.
So
I don't, we'll just say that it was the hand of God.
We'll just say it was God.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
And so it is cool because we have a rare thing where our families are very close and our parents are very good friends. All of your 3 siblings are good friends with my 3 siblings. And, you know, so we've had 25 years of...
We're very fortunate.
Yes.
And not only like they're close. They both of our parents live in Allen. We're in McKinney now. So they're both close. And so we have grandparents close by. But also, not only do we have the family closeness, but they also all made the same journey with us in terms of they were one church, you know, together in Houston. We all kind of went our separate ways for a little bit, but then have come back together and are in the same community today. Right. So we still see them every Sunday and men's and women's meetings and all of that kind of thing. So, So we were in College Station. I was going to college, and I remember the day we quit church.
I do too. We were both very involved in a local church there. It was a great church. We were on the worship team and a part of that. And
I still play on the bass amp that the old bass player at that church gave me for a steal when he was leaving town.
Yeah.
I play it today in church, 20 years later. So.
Yeah. So, but there was definitely one Sunday where we were sitting in the service and both looked at each other and were like, there has to be something else.
There has to be something else and something more. What I specifically remember is that there was an altar call or people coming up to get prayed over.
Yep.
And what I just remember noticing that day is the same people went up for that altar call that went up every Sunday for an altar call. And I remember thinking like that can't be right. Like it can't be that there's no migration and change and development, that you're in that same place across years with no change. I'm not saying sometimes processes take long and that's fine. So it's not so much a judgment on that situation or those people, but it was like there's something here that's not allowing people to grow and progress. And if they're not doing that, then we don't think that we should be here. So we did not go back.
We did not. And roughly around that same time, I think this is early 2003, your mom had contacted us about someone coming into town to do a meeting that was a part of something at the time called, it was just
World
Breakthrough Network at that point in time. And his name was Ian Chellen, and he was going to be coming in with Scott Webster. And so she was like, you guys should check it out. So we actually went with, it was me and you, and the people we were leading worship with at the time came along with us because we were excited. We're like, this is something new. Maybe this is where God's at. And I think within the first 15 minutes of the meeting, I think you and I looked at each other and were like, yes, this is it. This is home. And
I think that's the word, is it felt like home.
Yeah.
So Scott got up and started talking, and something about the way that he was describing the kingdom of God was like, this is our tribe. This is the people that we were destined to be connected to.
And the thing that life is a journey, that it wasn't just a stagnant place of being a believer of Christ, that there was actually a journey and a developed life and a built life. That
You
God
remember
has for us.
details? I just remember feeling like this is home. I don't remember.
Well, I still have the notes in my
you do.
notebook.
Of course you do. Of course you still have the notes.
So, but those were the big things. And so from there we got connected with Ian, and he was coming in
Once a month?
once a month.
Yeah, driving down from Dallas.
Driving down from Dallas. And you ended up going to a caucus
Yeah, up in Dallas.
in Dallas, which was a big meeting. And and then in 2005, you had graduated college and realized, oh, I have a degree and I can probably go get a real job somewhere out in the world.
I had
Not
a real-ish
You did have a
job.
real
It
job.
was a realish job. I did a real job. I worked for like an 8-person company.
You did.
And, I think what actually happened was I'd started a master's in computer science, and I was like a year into that and realized this is not for me.
Right.
Being a researcher and doing that was not what I was called to do.
Yeah.
And so it was time to look elsewhere. So I got a
Yeah.
job in Dallas. We moved to Dallas, which is where obviously Ian and what had shortly thereafter became Genesis Center was.
Yep.
And so then we were in Dallas from 2005 on, and we've been here almost 20 years now. So
Yep.
in the same community for 20 years.
Yep.
Yeah. So then somewhere in, I don't remember exactly what year it was, we learned that sometimes God speaks to us through weird things happening to our house. Crisis happening,
our
like
home.
physical crises in our home. We walked into a home. It was in Carrollton, Texas.
Yep. And it was in July of
2012 or 2013? 2013.
Yep.
And we had 2 inches of water in our house because the cable or the pipe underneath the sink had burst, and I'd come back after 8 hours. And and so we knew nothing about construction or the process then. We knew nothing at all. But the one moment that I remember in that was, as part of that, they had to rip everything out of our house. We could not stay there. And I remember, getting into a potentially intense conversation, knowing myself.
Because we had a 1-year-old who was on, not even one, he was 10 months and 11 months. And so to have him on bare, ripped up
we couldn't stay
foundation floors, we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
No kitchen.
And the insurance company basically was trying to say, this doesn't justify ALE, additional living expenses. And I remember feeling so incapable as a man. I was like, I cannot provide the basics for my family because I can't win this fight.
Right.
Today, I might be able to, but then I didn't know anything, and so I couldn't win the argument with the insurance. Eventually, they put us up in a hotel, extended stay. Sometimes we stayed with your parents. Yeah. But I remember driving, and I looked out at a field, and it was like literally the Bible verse dropped in. Look at the lilies of the field. Look at how God cares for them. And who of you can add a day to your life by worrying about these things? And I remember just wrestling with God, going, God, I feel incapable as a man to do everything I need to do for my family. And his strong word to me was, I am taking care of your family.
Yeah.
You serve me, I will take care of your family. And it's like something in me broke. There were tears.
Yeah.
But it resolved something in me that day to go, okay, there's no way for me to know every possible negative, bad thing that could happen, to you as my wife of 20 years, to our now 4 children, I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
But it was like that experience caused a sense of trust and understanding of who God is to get buried inside me in a way it never had before.
Yeah. Well, I think that's when we first ran into the sovereignty of God in a new way, in a very tangible way of like, I'm designing things inside of your life. And we didn't necessarily have that language then, but that's what it was, is all of these things are going to be for your good. And it grew us, it changed our family, it changed our dynamics. And we were different coming out of that experience.
Yeah.
And so it kind of catapulted growth inside of us and put us into a real state of building life differently than what we had before.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Avery house.
Okay.
So we moved out of Carrollton. We moved to a
Yeah, we
house.
were there almost 10 years.
Yeah. And then we just had too many kids.
Yes,
Although,
because
for the record, at one point in time, in our 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet, we did live in that house with your parents, with your sister,
Yes.
with 2 Great Danes and our Great Dane.
Yes, 3 Great Danes.
So we put a lot of people in that house.
We did.
Yeah. And
We maxed it out.
we did. We maxed it out. But it was a good time.
House.
And it was a good time. Even that story, right, is your dad is a teacher. And
Yep.
so he was moving from Houston to here. And when you're a teacher, you really need to move over the summer
Yep.
so you can start the next year. And so they moved and stayed with us.
Until they could find a house here and sell their house home.
And
back
it ended up
home.
being a good 6 months, I think.
Yeah, it was,
It was tight quarters, but it was
good.
It was really good. I enjoyed it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So anyway, so Avery. So we moved into Avery. Mm-hmm. And this would be...
It was in October of 2015.
Right.
Because it was
But when did the adventurous year start?
the adventurous year.
Yeah, the adventurous year. There was a year of adventure in Avery.
Yeah, that
Because
started.
Snowmageddon was in Texas, was
Yeah, but that-
February of 2020, right?
Yeah,
so it
but
would have been
our
summer
year-
of 2019.
No. Summer of 2019. No. It was summer of 2020.
So the big snowstorm was 2021?
Yep.
Okay. That's right, because it was already COVID. We were already in
Yes.
COVID world. So we are in the level of lockdown that Texas had. So if you're summer of 2020, we were still in some level of lockdown at that point in time for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So then water starts coming up from our foundation
It was July again.
in July, because
Yeah,
that's
like
when
the summer months
that's
are
what
our
happens
rough
to us.
months.
Is July happens, or water happens in July for us.
Yeah.
So water came up, and it turned out that they had run the pipe underneath the house, had gone through one of the beams when they were laying out the house initially. Things shifted, broke that pipe, ended up being
It had saturated all of the foundation and floor for
Yeah.
the entire downstairs.
the entire downstairs. So we
Yeah.
had to rip everything out.
Yeah.
And that was, it was less traumatic this time because we understood.
Well, it was still pretty traumatic, I would say, from the beginning. Just because we had done Carrollton, and so we kind of knew a little bit of the process. But I think once the full scope kept broadening, and it was like, okay, what is happening?
Yeah.
But it was summer, so it was nice because the kids, it wasn't a huge disruption to life for them because they were like, we're just on vacation anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, exactly. There are two interesting threads to this story as we unfold the year of adventure from July through July. I think, I think one is the thread of how much we learned about construction and design and our enjoyment of that process. And then the other thread is the adventure of moving our family to multiple different locations.
Right.
I think on the first thread, what was great was we had 2 guys who were the GCs that were recommended by the insurance, and they were excellent. They were high quality. They understood quality construction. They understood customer service. I remember sitting in our living room and going, "Hey, with the insurance money, is it possible for us to also replace this really old backsplash and these other things?" And then they were Russian, and so they then looked at each other, spoke in Russian for a few minutes, did some math from what we could tell, and then turned around and just said, yes, we can do that. That'll fit. And we're like, oh, okay. And we learned some things there.
Yeah.
But what they were so good at was they let me walk right there with the process, with the process. So I got to see, like, what is the order of operations? How do you take all this apart? Because we ended up redoing our whole kitchen. So I was taking out kitchen cabinets and flooring and repainting the walls. And but all of their subs were really, really high quality. And so watching them work, I learned how do you run a $40,000 or $50,000 renovation project? And I didn't know that before. And so that was really interesting.
Yeah, and on the other side, so it was July when the leak happened, and then once the insurance and adjusters and everything came out, and it was August. It was the 1st of August, and who does this? But we planned a summer vacation to Colorado, and we literally left the day that they started demo on the house because they drilled a hole, a large, I don't know, what was it, like 3 feet by
4 by 4 foot hole into
hole in the middle of our
foundation.
living room in front of our fireplace where the leak was, and tall enough for a man to stand down underneath there and fix the hole. And so that all started the day that we left for Colorado. But it was one of those things where it was like, again, back to the sovereignty of God and him moving and shaping and doing things behind the scenes. It was definitely a directed vacation, if you will. It was not like, oh, this stuff's happening, we have to leave anyway, let's go. It was a time for us as a family to reset, to see what was coming along the way, and just to have some time to enjoy each other. And so I think one of the things that set the tone for how to navigate and walk through crisis with joy and expectancy and faith and trust, knowing that God is navigating this whole thing. And so, yeah. But it was on the way home from that trip that we got the call. So because they were going to take out the countertops, because it was like floor tiles tiled on the counter.
It's always a good design decision.
It was a lot of grout.
There's a lot of grout on your kitchen countertops.
I would highly suggest not doing that. So the goal was to have them take off those counters and put in something else and keep our cabinets. Well, in the takeoff removal part, and then just probably damage from a 25-plus-year-old house, the cabinets were damaged. And so we were driving home. You got the call on the way, and you said they're going to have to take the cabinets out. And at the time, we didn't have the money inside of the insurance allotment to cover that. And so it was like, what is this happening? And I just remember sobbing, like my dog just died when they said we have to take the cabinets. And
which is wild because those cabinets were not attractive.
No, they weren't. They weren't great. They were not. But
really dark brown. It was,
yeah. So, but it was
choice we made.
And it was less about the cabinets and just more about okay, this next level of trust and understanding that God was going to take care of us. Mm-hmm. Because when he's in the car as we're driving, I said, how much more are you going to take? You're taking the cabinets. and he was he just said, I'm going to take everything. And it was just one of these moments of okay, God's doing this. God's shaping this pathway. And really, it was a hard position on my part am I going to trust him? That what he has for me is going to be way better than anything I could have done in and of myself, or that we could have done together. So
that's so good, because that was the start of us really understanding how to walk one together, but together on a journey where we really started learning how to go, okay, this thing has happened, leak, whatever, right? That's causing all these things. The next question is, God, what are you doing? Yeah. God, what are you doing? Is this something to fight? Is this something to press into? What are you doing? Because in each one of these events that happened, it really wasn't about the event. I mean, yes, listen, at
Right.
the end of the day, we got a much better looking kitchen.
For sure.
And, you know, we'll throw up some pictures here that shows the before and after
Yeah.
so people can see. And I feel confident that they will agree that it looked much better afterwards. So that was nice.
Yeah.
But what was better was you and I learning how to journey and hear God together. What was also better was how much our kids learned
Yes.
to have to have flexibility. How do you as a kid?
That was our big word for that whole season.
That was the
Flexibility.
Exactly, was flexibility.
Yeah.
You were doing school here, now you're doing school there. Now
Yeah.
you're doing school there. You're, you know, whatever, right? We've got, you know, but God gave us wisdom on, like
Yeah.
you said, to go on a vacation when it was time to allow everybody to decompress in
Yeah.
the midst of it. And so there was wisdom, but there was a sense of God is doing something, and that's the most important thing here.
Yeah. Yeah. So even when we came back from vacation, we didn't come back to our home. We came back to a rental, but it wasn't quite big enough for the 6 of us and a dog.
And school.
And school,
work.
because school had started up and we were right in the middle of COVID, and that was, you know, everyone was home.
Yeah.
We were working from home. The kids were schooling from home. And so we were in one rental house for like 3 days, I think.
Yeah.
And then we moved to another midterm rental that had a little bit more space for us. But yeah, so our kids started school online for the first time in a random rental house.
Yeah.
Midterm rental. And that was one of the things too for us is coming into these places and seeing corporate housing is great and it's much needed, but as a family to come in, like it was glass coffee tables and, you know, nice dinnerware and,
Right.
you know, like 3 pots, and we are a family of 6. And if I cook a meal, I had to use every pot that was in the house, you know? So part of my, like, even packing, and my house was completely packed because it was gutted.
Yeah.
So part of my strategy in packing was to make sure we had things like a pan and, you know, stuff for the kids to eat off of and those types of things. And so that kind of like down the road as we started this journey into building our business, that was something that was like high on our priority, was to make sure that our homes are suitable and compatible for families
Right.
and for people with children. And so that's kind of where that piece of who we are was birthed from, was from our own journey and being a part of
Right.
that process.
Experiencing
Yes.
places that were great for us
Yeah.
and our kids, and places that were less than ideal. And,
Yeah.
you know, for all of those reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it worked because, I mean, we've heard, you know, with our current midterm rental that we call the Highwood House in East Dallas, that, you know, you took everything that we learned and made sure
Right.
that there was things for the kids in terms of the types of plates and cups and forks, and cooking could be fully done. And I remember this one lady named Kathy. She single lady, she was in there, she liked to cook, and her comment to us at the end had everything to do with, this kitchen had everything that I needed.
Right.
She's like, I kept thinking that I was going to have to go get other things, and I didn't have to, because every time I looked, it was there. And to the degree that it actually changed her mindset, that by the end
She expected
it to be there.
Yeah.
But that really came out of our experience
Yeah.
in living in multiple places.
Yeah. So then we moved back. They had finished repairs and we moved back to the house. It was late September, I think.
And we're doing
And
the final walkthroughs
The
of like
final
markup things.
We actually we moved back in because I think our midterm rental ended.
Yeah.
And so we moved back in, and so we still didn't have hot water or gas because that was the last thing to go in, was to turn that back on, was the stove. And so when they were putting it in, we're walking around the house, just getting things back in order. And I'm like, I smell gas. I can smell gas.
And I remember I was like, no, Sarah, they're just turning it on. It can't be. And then we went and stood near the stove, and it was like, oh no,
There is gas.
there is definitely gas. So we shut it off real quick.
Yep.
And so then we had to bring plumbers out. And, you know, when the plumbers went and tested, obviously what they found was pretty much every joint in our natural gas system in our house was leaking. Every joint was leaking.
Right.
And so we had to get all that replaced. Now that's not an insurance claim, because an insurance claim needs an event and it needs damage, and we didn't have any of those. We could have just waited until our house blew up.
Right. If our house exploded, they would have covered everything.
Exactly. But
great.
Since the house had not exploded, it was no interest, something we had to pay out of pocket for. But the other thing about that, so that was painful at the time.
Yeah.
The other thing is our hot water. So we could live in the house while the plumbers were doing it.
No hot water.
But we had no hot water. And so I just remember that whole season from September to November, I think, while this thing was going on.
Well, I mean, really, it started the first time because the hot water line was the one that broke in the summer. So while we were there, we had no hot water.
And so I just remember that season we were living in our house.
Oh, yeah.
But one of us, myself, was just taking cold showers.
Yeah.
And you were just
driving,
putting all the kids in a car and with stuff to change and going to grandparents' houses, going to friends' houses.
Going to Ian and Nisha's house. Going to your brother's house, just anyone who had an open shower.
Does anybody have a place we can clean our dirty children, please?
And we were boiling water on the stove.
Yeah.
Or with our electric kettle to actually have hot water to wash dishes and all of that.
So that was a joy.
It was.
It was so fond.
I don't know about joy.
Memory of those processes. So we got into that. That's like November. So we started in July. We're now in about November. And the plumbers wrap it up. Passes inspection and all of that.
Stove is in. We have hot water again.
Life is good. That same week, I think was I working upstairs? I feel like I got a video from you. Yeah,
because when the plumbers came, they had taken down sheetrock in our master bathroom, which at the time was upstairs.
Yeah.
And in the ceiling in the kitchen. And you had been upstairs working on the sheetrock in our bathroom. And then you were just cleaning up. You started to take a shower, and I'm downstairs. And then all of a sudden, water is just pouring from the light in the middle of our kitchen below our bathroom. And so I take a video.
And I just remember looking at it going, what am I looking at? Because why is there water coming out through this sheetrock? That feels wrong.
Yeah.
So that was the same week this is. We're on event number 3 now.
Yep.
And, essentially what had happened was house was, call it 20 years old, and essentially the seal around the shower over time had basically just worn away.
Yeah.
So water was getting underneath into the subfloor and then down from there.
Just rolling down.
And again, because that one wasn't a failure in one of the covered structural systems.
Right, it was more of a maintenance issue.
It was a maintenance issue. At least that's how it ended up at that point in time.
Yep.
Not an insurance claim.
Nope.
And I remember we kind of started peeling away a little bit of the tile to figure out how far the damage went. And I remember looking at you going, if I keep going, we're going to destroy this shit. This bathroom is going to get completely destroyed because if I start digging at this, we have to do it. Go all the way.
Yeah.
And we decided to go ahead and do that. Right. I actually can't even remember what the shower looked like before.
What was that old, the brass rimmed shower, corner shower with the big garden tub next to it. And so you had that up against one whole wall.
Right.
And so you started with the tile around the shower first.
You're talking about the rebuild process?
No, pulling it up. That. You started looking at that first, and we found mold, and the subfloor was rotted, and all kinds of stuff. And so then you started working into the shower, and
it was just all that.
It was all that. Everything to the studs.
Yeah, basically that bathroom, at least over in that area, to the studs. Mm-hmm. I remember those old Formica tubs. I remember taking a Sawzall, cutting it into pieces, felt like you're trying to cut up a dead body to hide somewhere to get it out the door.
Or not. We have no experience with that.
I have no experience with the dead body piece, but I do have experience taking apart a big tub so you can get it out the door.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, but what was fun about that was, to thread 1, the construction thread.
Yeah.
So if the first one was watch a GC, do a big project, and learn a lot of things, this was learn hands-on work.
Right.
Because we demoed it, and demoing it then required us to replace a section of the subfloor. So I'd understand, how do you put in a subfloor properly? What does that
Right.
look like? How do you attach it? What's the right kind of adhesive? All of those kind of things. And then because the house was old, we obviously wanted to put a standing shower in.
Yep.
It had like a 2-inch drop, like little 3x3 area, a 2-inch drop in that subfloor. And so we ended up putting self-leveling concrete in, like building it up
Right.
and sealing everything properly and basically creating a level floor,
Surface, right.
a level surface. And then we did a new rough in because we moved the plumbing around so we could put we wanted to put a standalone tub in.
Yep.
So I had to learn about that. Got a lot of help from Sherman Waters, my brother-in-law. Your
Yep.
sister's
We had all
husband.
kinds of family.
Yeah. Oh, we had all kinds of help. He came in and helped. My dad came in and helped.
My dad came in.
Your dad came in and helped. Yes, I remember because we put in subway tiles.
Yep.
Around through the shower and kind of around the tub.
And this is winter now.
And this is winter and it's cold.
Yeah.
Especially if you're outside. And so I had bought just a wet sulfur tile.
Yep.
And your dad, God bless him, just ran up we'd get to the edge where you have to cut every single tile. And he's just running down, cutting subway tiles, bringing it up. His hands are freezing. He's getting a lot of exercise. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we learned how the core construction pieces, the plumbing,
Right.
how to tile, like what does that look
Waterproofing.
like, and waterproofing. So that was the first time I got to use the whole Schluter membrane system, which I love, and that was a lot of learning there. It was
Yep.
exciting. How to build cabinet doors because we had some really old cabinet doors. So
Right.
we managed to.
We kept the vanity in place.
The vanity was one of those ones where you had a cabinet and a place where you could put a chair in.
Yeah.
And we're like, we don't have
We
a
don't do
chair
this.
in here. So I had to build a cabinet.
Yep.
And put it in, and then put doors in, and replace the mirrors, and shiplapped half of it. Those are the words. Painted it with a sprayer.
Got a sprayer.
And
Found that life.
yeah. And then at the end of the day, it looked really good. And it's also where the other cool thing about that was where you and your sister Hannah really started working together.
We did.
That's where we're like, oh, that works because you guys work together. Again, we'll find some good pictures of the
Before and after.
of the bathroom. But the thing with the bathroom is the way that you guys. Part of it was the choosing the fixtures and all that, but then how you guys decorated it, it was really good.
Yeah.
And so we work with her to this day because you guys just create a really cool partnership
Yes.
around design.
We do. We do have a very good creative collaboration.
Yeah, you guys have a
partnership.
great collaborative.
There's definitely a synergy when we get together and
Yeah.
work.
It brings
So-
you both life when you work
Yeah.
together. So it's I'm always looking for opportunities for
Yeah.
how can Sarah and Hannah work together because it brings
always good.
It's always good.
Yeah.
It's always good. So we learned some construction.
We did learn some construction.
I don't know what we were doing. We had hot water there, and so we were just kicking
We
our
had-
kids out of their bathroom, I assume.
Yeah, we were just we had the guest bathroom downstairs, so we were using that one some while
Yeah.
that one was being rebuilt. But yeah. So again, flexibility in the middle of things.
Yep.
But so then we actually finished that bathroom, had finished decorating, putting on cabinet doors.
We're
It was
done.
the last thing.
Oh, it was amazing.
And that week was when, in February of 2021, is when we had the ice Mageddon. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, one of the biggest
It was a
claims type
natural
events that's ever
disaster
happened. Yeah.
for Texas because we were down in the negatives
Yep.
for 3 or 4 days. We were fortunate. We did have power, but it was circulating off and on
every few hours.
So, and we did have gas, so we had our fire, so we had some heat components, and we were running a drip, but these Texas houses don't have
Not enough
much
insulation, and they run their water right up the
on
outside
the outside
wall.
of the walls. And so our brand new kitchen that we had just finished.
We heard it. It was at night. I remember hearing it
We
pop.
were sitting down and it had just started to thaw out. And all of a sudden we hear this pop and this rush of water. And so we knew it was where it was. You ran outside and
I knew where the
water
cutoff
off.
was at that point in time, and we had that water off 3 minutes max. That water ran.
I grabbed every blanket, towel, anything we had to soak up
We
water
tried.
because it was already through the floor coming up underneath one end of the cabinets of our kitchen. And
So our brand new kitchen cabinets that had just been done, and our engineered hardwood floors, which, you know, once you get water underneath there and it gets captured, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And
Brand new tile, backsplash wall.
all of it. And so basically we redid the first project again, almost in its entirety. We didn't have to do all of the kitchen cabinets
Right.
again.
You just had to do one half.
One
They
half.
had to refloor it.
Yeah.
Because it was all continuous.
But what was interesting there is that's when I was like, oh, I've been through a GC process. I've watched how they've done it.
Right.
I've put my hand to some of these things now. And so I can build that kitchen cabinet. Like at that point in time, I did not have the skills to do the drawers and all of that, but that's fine. We just salvaged all that. I just had to build the shell. That was within my skills at the time.
Yep.
And I remember, and so I was like, I'm just going to do it. And so I remember I went and I downloaded the Xactimate software that insurance companies use. I was like, they're going to want to see this formal. And so I built out like a whole Xactimate estimate, sent it into them and said, this is what it's going to take. And
that's Aaron Brown in a sentence right there. This is what they're going to want. I'm going to learn it and I'm going to do it.
I'm going to give them what they want. So then they will give me what I want. That feels right. That's exactly. That is right. So we sent it into them. I mean, I tried a lot of different estimating software, but at the end of the day, that was the one they wanted to see. And they still sent their adjuster out there, and she approved and accepted, and gave us a sizable chunk of money, and it was enough for us to go and redo it. And so then we're like, oh, this is what it looks like for us to run and schedule these different things, and work out that budget and all of that, and do some of the construction.
Yeah, and for that one, we actually, we didn't know how long the process, because it was a natural disaster, the insurance were just bogged down. Contractors were overrun. So it was actually like 4 weeks later before we actually had any work done on the house.
Yeah.
And we moved in because it was water again, so water was shut off to the house. Well, they got it fixed pretty quick for the water itself, but the damage was still there. But we moved in with your parents.
Yep.
We
6
thought
weeks.
we thought it was just going to be a couple weeks, and it ended up being 6 weeks. And so our kids had finished their school for the winter break, or they started, I guess, in your parents' house. Well, they finished that spring in May is when we moved out, and they finished school at your parents' house online, and then we lived in a little apartment for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Which is one of the funniest things. Like, so we've been in houses, regular single family homes, right?
Yep.
And our kids, this is their first taste of apartment living.
Life. Yep.
And they loved it.
They did.
There were friends that lived upstairs. They would just go run out and play with them right there. Like, they thought this was amazing.
Yes.
So they clearly learned some flexibility and learned some how to just deal with whatever they had by that point in time, because they were sad when we went home.
Yeah, they were like, why are we leaving this apartment?
We're
It's
leaving
great.
this amazing apartment. You want to go live in this house where we're just by ourselves? That's the worst. Why would we do that? There's other kids at this place.
Yeah. So,
oh my gosh.
But yeah, so that was, more transitions, more movement.
But what I remember about that is even like the 6 weeks living with my parents, I just remember being full of life and full of really good conversations. There's two ways to see this, right? Like there's the, oh my gosh, we're not in our house, we're inconvenienced, etc. But then also the other side was, these are my parents who I love. Mm-hmm. Who would thought that I would get another opportunity in my life to go live in immediate proximity with them and enjoy eating dinner with them every night and all of that? Like, that was amazing. Like, it was an amazing moment in time that, I don't know, I got so much life out of that.
Yeah. Well, and in that time period too is when we really start to see the seeds of our business. Mm-hmm. And so we went through their consulting company, Orchard. Part of it is just helping businesses, whether it's small businesses launch or coming in alongside and helping establish businesses. But for us, like, we went through their initial training and kind of got the beginning seeds of By Design. We didn't have the name yet then, but we called it
BF6, Brown Family 6.
Brown Family 6, BF6. And so, but yeah, it was just like God had been lining things up for us to kind of, because back in 2018, we had gotten a word about building businesses and owning lands and homes and things like that. And so, but we hadn't really done anything with it. We hadn't seen where God had said, go do something.
Right.
And so, but through the course of that year and a half, we could see where God was like, okay, let's go. Let's start to build this thing.
Let's start to build it. Now that's 2021.
That's
we
2021.
did not buy a house. We didn't do any actual real estate investing until March of 2022. Right? Because we're coming up now on, this will be 2 years.
This will be 2 years.
Yeah, 2022, right? So we didn't buy a house. We just started learning, putting in place the foundations. And part of that was because, that prophetic word that we got was very clear. It said, hey, there's all this great, awesome stuff. You're gonna invest in businesses and homes and lands. But, Mr. Brown, this is predicated on one very specific thing.
Yes.
Your ability to be dead and to be able to hear the voice of God with significant clarity. And there was a real emphasis on the and. Remember, Steve Schultz, remember his voice. And the voice of your wife.
Yeah.
And and said, you should not invest any time, energy, mental capacity, anything until you and your wife are on the same page with that. And that really started, and that was hard for me because I'm like, I want to run fast. I like running fast.
Yeah.
And
you got the word and let's go.
Let's go. Like, let's go build some things. Let's go make it happen.
Yeah.
And, but that word was such a regulator because it basically put me in a situation where it's like, one thing I know for sure is I don't want to step out of the will and plan for God.
Right.
Like, that's resolved. I don't want to do that. And this regulator got put in place that said, you have got to learn how to build with this woman, and you guys have got to go on this journey together.
Right.
And I would say over the last 3 years, that has been one of the biggest parts of our journey our process has been, well, what does that actually look like?
Yeah.
With our personalities and who God has made each one of us to be individually, like, how do we work together in a way that isn't combative, right? Like, because there's this natural tension.
Well, and I had to grow and change to not just be like, Aaron's this wild horse.
Aaron's this guy's just
going off running, and I've got to tug back on these reins because he's just going to go.
Right.
Like, it became less of this like, Aaron's going to just go. Like the governor or something on a car.
Yes, your role as the governor.
Yes, you want to go 180, but that top speed, I'm gonna govern it to like 106.
Now, in your defense, I remember in College Station, coming downstairs and going, I bought a motorcycle.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I thought the eBay buy it now button, for those of you who remember
had
eBay, had 2 clicks, and it didn't, and so I bought it, and that just happened, and then I had to, and I didn't really know how to ride a motorcycle.
You did not.
So I had bought it. We're in College Station.
In Dallas.
So I learned to ride the motorcycle. I had borrowed a small Yamaha Radian.
Tiny one.
A tiny one. So it's not like I couldn't ride it all, but I had rode it a couple times. So somebody, I don't remember who it was, drove me to Dallas.
Yeah.
I went to the dealership where I bought this thing, hopped on it, and rode it back. I was so sore. Anyway, so there was that. The other, we might as well tell it,
Just
right?
tell it.
Like
I was going to tell it, but go for it.
Our first foray into real estate investing was back, this is back in like 2003 when, if you asked for money, banks gave it to you. And I just thought that was just the best thing. And so I found a duplex in College Station. And it was $150,000. And I remember working it out with the bank that they were going to wrap in closing costs, and it was going to cost me $800 cash to buy that through traditional financing, which is, and apparently, or so the way Sarah tells it, she never saw it, barely knew I was doing it until I said, can you please sign your name here?
Yes. I show up to a building with papers that says sign your name because you now own a duplex.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
And then I think shortly after we actually went and saw them, and I was
Here
like,
it is.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, there's a reason why you don't over leverage that way, because
That's true.
that thing never cash flowed.
It didn't.
Never. It only cost us money.
It was rough.
For the 8 years we owned it.
But we were able to sell it, and that was great.
It was fine. It was fine at the end of the day, and we learned some
So we've
things.
come a long way.
But the point was, it's very reasonable that you had this, like, if I'm the go drive, take that mountain, whatever,
Right.
that you feel like you've got to be the governor,
Right.
right? Like, that's normal. And I think what we've learned is, like, that's not how that's supposed to look.
Right.
You are not my governor. You are not accountable for making me not crazy and go do crazy things. That's not it.
Right.
And the movement has been where, and it's been a movement on both sides, where when we were operating that way, I would want to go do something and you'd be like, but, and no matter how nicely and reasonable you said it, there was this, but these details you haven't thought of. Man, I'd just get mad.
Yeah.
Oh,
there was a little bit.
I was just angry because I was like, you're stopping me from doing all these great things. And it's like really what I've learned. And it probably took me, I'm going to say 21 out of the 23, maybe 22 out of the 23 years of our marriage, was you are designed to be able to see details that I don't see.
Right.
And every time you see them, proven track record of there's value in that. And so I learned to trust you
Yeah.
and to go to you and to pull on that in you. And the reverse side is that then created an environment where you were safe to talk to me in ways that you knew you weren't going to get. Today you're not going to get most of the time. You're not going to get, there's not a never. This is never. I do get excited still sometimes.
Yes.
But what you're going to get at the core of it is us partnering,
Yeah.
where each of us brings that strength.
Right.
And you trust me not to go crazy. If I say, look, this is what we need to do, I feel like you trust me
Yeah.
much more than 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it is. It's a partnership. It's a compatibility between you and I of like, we complement each other in our strengths and our weaknesses. And
Yeah.
so we are more closely operating as God designed us to operate.
Yeah.
And so that's what's been kind of the journey from the very
From all of
beginning,
these.
all the years ago till today, and still going on, is, deeper levels of synchronization between you and I, where we do more quickly see the same things
Yeah.
and work to do the same things. But always that balance of like, you're going to see things that I'm not going to see, and vice versa. I will see things that you won't see. And so we have to be able to bring those pieces
Yeah.
to the table.
And it just, when we've learned to value what the other person, it's like, I'm going to be able to see the big picture. I'm going to be able to see, hey, this year, these are the things that are going to happen. I can see it. I know it's going to happen that way. But then when we get closer, you're the one who can go, yes, but we should also consider.
Yes.
And we should also consider.
Yeah.
And when we work together, then it keeps our family safe
Yeah.
and growing and building in the right direction. It keeps us safe. It allows us to keep moving forward. And we're in the middle of this, what I think is an incredibly fun journey of real estate. And, we started with midterm rentals. We really felt like that was the initial vision of it, based on our experience. And we started there. And then, well, let's tell the Avery story first, because I think
Yeah.
it's a good cap to the hearing God.
Yeah.
And
So,
go ahead.
because when we moved out, we moved back into the Avery house, and through that process, by the time we moved back in, we really felt like God was like saying, "It's time to sell." It's time
And we were
to
okay
move
with that
on.
because we were also done with that house.
We were kind of done with it.
Done with that house.
But there was a shift coming for us as a family in terms of our schooling and how we saw the configuration of life
Right.
going forward.
Yeah.
And we could see that Avery was not going to be.
We needed a space where our
that
kids
place.
could be at home, 2
Yes.
to 3 days a week, schooling in a
Yeah.
permanent fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, so we moved back in I don't remember now, April, I think. And we put it on in May, and I think it was on the market for 4 days, and it sold. We had multiple offers, and
Yeah. Because this was during the crazy time, right?
Yeah,
Everything was just
where everything was selling.
as soon as you put it out there.
Which made it kind of a leap of faith to trust God that, hey, are we going to find a house?
Yeah, because we were not in a financial position where we could go buy a house without selling our house.
We had to sell our house. And so, but it was just one of those things where we started looking and we had this kind of idea out there of what we thought was this next house. And we started looking, and we even put in offers on places. And we had just come up to this crossroads of not knowing and not feeling like we were hitting the mark. And so when we get to those places, our suggestion and my suggestion is always, let's go talk to Ian Chillen.
Let's go talk to leadership.
Let's go talk to leadership. And so, and it was just one word. He just gave us one word, and it just completely shifted our gaze. And I think within a week, we found this house.
Yep.
And it really was just kind of a God moment of, in such a crazy market, it was having like 15-minute viewings, and they were just stacked. And we showed up in 15 minutes, walked this house. You know, the next person was coming up right behind us, and we put an offer in that night. And I think by then,
it was real fast.
It was super fast.
One of the wild things about that part was when we were selling Avery, we had multiple offers, and we had one offer that was $50,000 more than every other offer.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It was a lot. No, it came with some stipulations. It was like, and you shall accept this offer by tomorrow at 1 or whatever. Like it wasn't
even that long. It was today. It was that day.
It was intense. And so, you know, I don't want to hyper spiritualize the type of decision, but we did feel like, look, it matters. Who's going to live in this house matters. We felt like that was important. So I remember we were at my parents' house, and you know, like, okay, well, let's pray about it. We're getting into this synchronization thing.
Yep.
And so I remember we sat down to pray, and what God asked me was, he's like, could you hear me to take the lower offer? There's a lower offer and there's a higher offer that we were down to 2 at that point in time. Could you hear me? And you know, it's one of those things where you kind of, you look inside, you do a bit of self-assessment, you're like, no. Actually, the answer is no. Like right now, if I just ask that question,
I'm going to take the higher.
I'm going to take the higher offer. I can't hear that. And I just remember it was just kind of this sense of inside of him going, 50,000 is nothing to me.
Right.
Like that's not, I can make that back. Like that is a terrible reason to make this decision.
Right.
Or to not be able to hear me correctly.
Right.
And so reconfigured inside a little bit and asked again, and he said, take the lower offer. So he took the lower offer. What was wild was in the midst of that crazy, you know, market that we were in, we got this house. We don't know in the natural why they had put this house on the market for the price that it did, because it was $100,000 underpriced. Like it was massively underpriced. We bid 65 over asking, and got it. But by the time the appraisal came in, it immediately had equity. Right. Like from when we put the offer in, got the appraisal, it immediately had a chunk of equity. And within months, we had easily made back up the 50,000 in terms of like housing equity. And it was like God was saying, please.
Like I got this.
Like, please. Like you can't.
Well, that was something throughout that whole journey that God repeatedly told us was, I have you. Like
I've got this. Go on the journey with me.
Right. I've
got
got this.
Journey.
Yeah. So then we get in this house. And the story continues.
Well, in the story, we had another water leak, like another weird combination. We won't go into all the details on this one from a time standpoint, but needless to say, pipe was broken under the house, plus a toilet was overlapping, and through some wisdom from God, we got the insurance to go, yeah, sure, those are connected, that the water came out up here and the thing is underneath, and that's one claim, and we'll fix all this sort of stuff up. And I remember I went for a walk, and again, at this point in time, we know this process, and I was like, God, what are you doing? And part of it was a variety of things, but one of the things he said was our bedroom had always been a place where we hadn't spent time making it nice, right? Making it a place. And he's like, you need to fix that. And so that's where we are sitting there right now. That's what this wall that Sarah hand wrote on a
design
She designed it by hand, and we had somebody come and put it in, and we made a nice little sitting area and just created a space for us to have peace away from a noisy, active 4-child life.
Yep.
And God was like, that's important. You need to have that space where you can sit and be quiet and talk to one another and all of that. And that was a piece of it. And it's like, that's what we learned to do over time, is to go, something happened, we go to God and we ask, and he gives wisdom, and then we press into that. And it lets us know how to spend money and where to put effort and all of those kind of things. And so that's where we're at now. So,
And
yeah, go ahead.
well, through that process, we had another short stint out of the house.
We had another ALE, go stay with somebody
ALE.
else.
Well, we had the rental house just up the road, another midterm rental. We were there just 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, not that long.
While the work was done in here, because they did have to tear up floors and they did go down through the foundation again. And so we couldn't.
Lots of holes in foundations.
Yep.
That's our thing.
So, but that's where, and again, that's one of the things that God's been really key for us. I know some crises you kind of, as parents, you kind of shelter your kids from because they don't need to know all the details. But with this housing journey that we've been on now for 2.5+ years, God was very clear that we needed to have our kids come alongside us.
Right.
And so they weren't in every single discussion, but they were in, we brought them into both, this is the thing that's happened, and here's what God has done.
Right.
And so over and over again, they got to see the hand of God working and moving in their life, and providing for them, and that we never missed a birthday. We still had a house over our heads, and we had food on our table, and we got to engage in vacations, and they still went to school and had thriving, education lives, and they still got to interact with their friends and make new friends, and so it was just this steady underlying thread of bringing our whole family along for the journey. And so that there wasn't a point where, like, they will have something that they can build. Like, now you can ask them, will God take care of you? Do you trust God? And they would say yes, because they've seen his faithfulness in their lives. And we were able to describe that to them and show them. I mean, even to the point where we all sat down at that house before we moved back into this house.
It's true.
And you,
I did a PowerPoint. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So
kids are visual. Kids are visual.
Kids are visual. The kids are visual, and so I would love to find that PowerPoint, but it was telling the story of, like, there was some graphics with water and what water does to a house, but then it led to, but this is what we've seen God do over time. And yes, I remember standing in the living room of that rental house.
Mm-hmm.
The TV was over the mantle, and we had it plugged in, and we're doing a PowerPoint to there's my 4 kids at varying levels of understanding. Because at that point in time, they were probably 12, 9, 6, and 3, or somewhere in that range. So the 3-year-old was like, that's a pretty picture, right? And that was great. That was what she needed. But the 12 and the 9, and to some degree the 6, could start to understand. And what the fruit of that whole thing is, one, their own development and what's been built inside of them. But the other thing is that it's built a track record of our ability to speak to them and them to understand that we can hear God and that God's going to take care of us. And it has, what it has built is, now I have an amazing relationship. We have amazing relationships with our 14-year-old teenage daughter. Yep. Right? Now, is she a teenage daughter? Yeah, she is. Yep. But she's amazing. Yep. And we have real, deep, genuine conversations. And I know a piece of it is things that have been built in her over this process. Yeah. So it's incredible. Yeah. So we journey on. So we started as midterm rental. That's really where we thought this is what the real estate business is going to be. Right. What was it that triggered? Because I don't remember you to, like, take the staging, becoming a licensed stager classes.
Yeah. So I, we were about to do the, getting into furnishing a house, and obviously I had now redesigned a kitchen in my other house. I had picked out floors. I had picked out paint. I had picked out fixtures. I'd redone a bathroom, all all of that. He had done our room. And so it was just one of those things where it had slowly been building. And I essentially staged our house for Avery to sell with the help of your awesome realtor mom. But it was one of those things where as we peered into like midterm rentals and understanding that and furnishing them, because that was the whole point, was that we wanted to furnish them for people, was I didn't feel confident in my own understanding at that point. And so I was like, I want to know like colors and spacing and all of that, all of the components of design that would help influence my decisions, whether or not I actually sat down and talked with anybody or not, but would help influence my own decisions on how to shape and build things. And so, so I went through the certification process to become a certified stager. And it was really good because I think it gave me a good, at least foundation to build some things on top of. So.
And it's turned into a core piece of the business. I mean, you probably have 2 appointments a month right now, I would bet, on average. And I think that, where we're at with what is now By Design Homes, from a business name standpoint, is it's all of those things. It's midterm rentals, but it's also staging, design, construction, and we'll see, right? This, my strong sense is God's like, this year, all of that is going to grow. Without changing the other things that are in our lives, right? Like there's no sense of other things. Like you're going to continue to do bookkeeping for Orchard, right? That'll still happen. My day job is growing and thriving and will continue to be a consistent place of investment for me. We continue to be leaders, especially among the men and women of our community, and continue to raise 4 children who continue to get older, and as they do, like all of those things is like, God is like, but all of those things, you were designed to be able to carry that weight. You were designed to be able to manage all of those things if we kind of continue on the track record of what he's built in us in terms of our ability to hear his voice, interact with leadership when it's time to do so. Us continuing just to become who we're called to be, and then giving space for each other to journey and grow and continue to get closer. So, I
mean, it ultimately is that it's a journey into him and understanding who we are as individuals, who we are as David and Sarah, who we are as the Brown family, and then how that fits inside of our community and inside of By Design Homes, and just hearing his voice and obeying. And that's the clearest pathway to a built life in him. So.
And this podcast.
We're going to
keep doing this podcast. So.
Yeah. That was something that kind of came from a side street that we didn't know was on the pathway.
Yeah, it was not expected.
But Hannah actually thought of it
a long time
ago and was like, hey, you should do a podcast.
Yeah.
And talk to other business owners. And so finally it dropped in our hearts as well. And so it's been something that we don't know what the end result is right now. We just know that God's saying, talk to these people,
and build
talk to each other.
Talk to each other, apparently.
and just see where he takes it. So the fruit of it already has been more than I ever thought we would see. So it's been really good.
It has. It was interesting because it started actually as a result of, I'm a part of a real estate community called Sub 2 that's led by Pace Morby. And he was specifically going to spend some time with people to teach them everything he knows about social media, from landing pages and email lists and all of that. And I was like, well, sign me up for that. That feels really important in terms of building out real estate. And you and I talked about it. I was like, hey, this is going to be an investment of time. And so again, synchronization, we talked about it, and I didn't just go jump in, and you're like, yeah, it feels right. And so one of the first things there was, hey, you should create a podcast, right? You should start to create that out there. And so we decided, yes, we'll do that. We weren't really sure. Initially, I thought it was going to be real estate. I was like, hey, it's in real estate. We'll talk to real estate people.
Yep.
And then we have not talk to real estate people. We've talked to digital design firms and video production firms and architecture, but also digital design. I mean, our next episode with the Gresslands will be our kind of first high-end custom home builder in South Dakota, our closest to on point.
Yeah.
But man, I think the thing has just been, it's been such a joy to be able to have like rich conversations with people about how are they building life?
Yeah.
How are they going through this journey we call life and building something of substance and meaning and impact. So, really excited.
Yep. Let's move in. But now you've moved your cup and we're not symmetrical anymore.
I got to get comfortable. That's what it is.
Yeah, you moved that mic all over the place.
Dude, I can't say
You were like, and then you were
in the frame to make sure we were square the whole time.
okay.
I was in, out, in, out. That's what I do at work all day long. Anyway, we're going again?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, kind of as a follow-up to that, we're talking about like, why are
To what? What are you following up on?
We were just talking about, you and I, at the end there.
Is this a follow-up or is it going to be at the beginning?
Well, I don't know. I thought it was going to be at the end, like,
Oh, I thought we were just, what?
Huh?
What are we talking about?
It's going to go somewhere.
Okay.
Well, we were going to talk to like into the camera, right?
Right.
Like looking at that camera, or we're going to look into that camera.
We're talking into the
I'm gonna look
camera.
into that camera. I mean, we're doing whatever Dustin told us to do.
Yeah, that's what Dustin told us to do.
And I think she's right. I think you should put this at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay. That might change that would change my phrasing. So I'm glad you guys are here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Notice that my cup is empty, so this happened after.
Move it back.
Just move it back.
No, I mean, it's empty.
Just
so.
digitally fill it with water. He can add
No,
that in.
that's the thing.
No one's even gonna look at that guy.
I'm also gonna have to work at forgetting that Dustin is in the room.
I know.
That is like part of me wants to like bring
turn
you
and
in.
look at
No,
you.
I don't want you to leave.
Okay.
That's not what I'm saying. No, not at all.
Yeah, I definitely am like, am I supposed to turn here?
No, I think that
I'm not.
Dustin's not, unless we bring him in, unless we like fourth wall him in type of thing, he's not.
I don't know what that means. Anyway,